But let's talk to Ann Widdecombe, a woman who always puts a smile on everybody's face. Ann, a very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Nice to see you in this rather dreary summer that we're having. Sometimes I rather wish I was actually in a hotter climate where I was getting up in the morning and thinking, how am I going to stay cool today? Certainly not what we have to do at the moment. But meanwhile, net zero and the love and the quest for net zero continues. This government is starting to make noises that they might have got that wrong, but they surely must now see and learn the lesson of Uxbridge, mustn't they?
Indeed, and you know they've been very, very slow in learning that lesson. Now, for example, Reform UK have for a long time said that the net zero target is unrealistic, unnecessary, and the Tories are just now catching up. They held Uxbridge against all the odds simply because of ULEZ. So they are at last, I think, facing some evidence that the electorate's had enough. Now, you know, the problem is this. Nobody's going to argue that we don't need to curate the planet properly. Nobody's going to argue that Earth is in one of its periodic spells of warming. Nobody's going to argue that at all. And if we can do anything about it in terms of restraint with what we use and how we use it, fair enough. But there is such a thing as proportionality.
Of course.
And what the electorate is now facing, and when we talk about the electorate, we're talking about ordinary human beings trying to budget in very difficult times. They are facing having to replace their cars with very expensive electric ones. They are facing having to replace their boilers with very expensive ones. And with ULEZ, it was if you wanted to go into London, then you had to pay extra. And if your work took you in there regularly, that was a very big cost. And the electorate are now saying, hang on, proportionality. We contribute in this country 1%, 1 miserable percent towards the Earth's carbon emissions.
Yes.
Look at what China contributes. It's around 20%.
Right.
So therefore, why on earth do we have to put on a hair shirt and engage in all sorts of completely disproportionate responses when that's all we're guilty of?
But surely the whole point, Anne, is that we should be the world leaders. That's what they tell us. They say whenever I ask any politician, why on earth should Britain be the ones, as you say, to put on the hair shirt, they always say, well, don't you want to be the world leader? Grant Shapps once said to me, don't you want to be the world leader in onshore wind? And I said, not really. And he was so shocked that I said that, because clearly nobody had ever told him that in his life. He didn't really know what to say.
No, I mean, the fact is, what we should be world leaders in, I can sum up in 2 words: common sense.
Right.
We should be world leaders in common sense, in proportionality. We should set the tone and say, look, we contribute very, very little until other countries who contribute a huge amount start to put on their hair shirts, and their citizens also have to face these expenses. We're not going to do it to ours. And I honestly cannot see what is wrong with that. I mean, for us, who contribute 1% towards the world's carbon emissions, for us to go in for all of this huge net zero arbitrary targets program is like throwing a sugar cube into Loch Ness and saying, oh, look, I've sweetened the waters.
And also the thing that I have trouble with is that the people who seem to be behind all of the so-called renewable energy markets, the companies that run renewable energy concerns, they're getting massive subsidies from the government thanks to our taxes that we're being asked to pay, green taxes which are being put on top of the levy that we already pay for our energy. And, you know, if you want to make money in this country, it seems to me you start up a green energy company.
Well, exactly. I mean, you know, there is an immense amount of green subsidy for which you and I pay. The other thing that really always gets on my nerves is when you get lectured pontifically by all these people who say, you know, we have a duty. And the next thing you know is, and this is politicians, celebrities alike, they're on jets going halfway across the world to discuss how they're going to save the world.
Right.
It is a ridiculous situation. The electorate is waking up. Uxbridge actually shows that. And Rishi Sunak would do well to take that lesson on board. He's only got about a year to go. Take that lesson on board and reflect those concerns in the next election.
Yeah, and you know what, the arrogance of the lobby that is pushing all of this, and I named Sadiq Khan as one of the main protagonists, are absolutely certain that this expansion of ULEZ, which is still under review, basically, because it's a judicial review that's going on, a court of law will decide whether or not he acted lawfully by deciding to expand it. They've already got posters up everywhere saying it's going to happen. at the end of this month. But it may not happen because they may be told that they can't make it happen because it's illegal.
Well, they're intending for it to happen at the moment, you know, and regardless of what happened in the by-election and regardless of what public opinion may be, Sadiq Khan is set on his course. And indeed, I mean, it may well be that he is abruptly reversed because that's what the law says, as the government has found out with Rwanda. You know, you can't always do the thing you want to do. But what I would like to see is, I don't just want to see the expansion of the scheme, Sprat. We should be looking at the whole scheme and what it's costing people and what the benefits are. And I don't think anybody's actually done a very serious cost-benefit analysis.
Absolutely not. And as we've seen, the sort of the love and the quest to buy more electric cars is actually leading us down the wrong path as well, because electric cars, it turns out, are actually more expensive now to run because of the cost of electricity. You can't actually charge them because there's not enough charging points. There is no infrastructure to have more electric cars than we currently have. And they're so heavy now that people are having to reconstruct bridges and car parks in order to accommodate them.
Indeed, and you and I can remember when we were all being encouraged to buy diesel cars because they were more green. And now diesel cars are apparently the instrument of the devil itself when it comes to green technology.
Yes.
And exactly the same thing is now going to go for electric cars. First of all, they're impractical. We haven't got anything like the charging facilities and all the rest of it that we need. Secondly, as you are now pointing out, people are stopping and thinking a bit and realising that actually they could be quite anti-green. And if we've any sense at all, we'll scrap all that rubbish about after 2030 you can't buy new petrol and diesel cars.
Right. Well, it's not practicable. I mean, you're basically looking at somebody, for example, who now may wish to buy a new family car. What are they supposed to do? Because we're only 6 years away, practically, from a diesel or a petrol car being worth nothing at all because you won't be able to resell it. So it really is already having an impact on business, isn't it?
Oh, I think it is beginning to have an impact. I mean, the fact is it won't be unlawful to drive a petrol or a diesel car after 2030. It will merely be unlawful for it to be sold. So I think what we will see probably is a huge boom around about, 2029, when everybody decides that they better get the petrol cars while they can.
Yes.
And certainly I'm one of those people who is now thinking, right, at what stage do I get my petrol car to see me out, if you like?
Yeah, I mean, that is literally the combination of things that people are going to have to weigh up. Because also, if you buy an electric car, there's also a chance, it was described to me by Howard Cox, that electric cars are going to be the sort of Betamax of motor vehicles, because pretty soon somebody will come up with a new version of a hydrogen car, and those old electric cars will look very clunky indeed, and it'll look like it was an innovation for the 1970s.
Yeah, I mean, Howard Cox has got a lot of sense on this issue. I just think we now need to pause. We need a complete reappraisal. And the first thing we need to accept is that scientists are not always right. Just before the turn of this century, there was a 15-year pause in global warming that none of them predicted. They all said it was going to go on warming year on year. Now they've got all sorts of complicated excuses for why they didn't foresee it. Scientists are not always right, and I think we need to keep science in proportion and make it a tool that we can use, not some sort of dictator that we have to obey.
Well, I think I'm quite staggered at the numbers of people who believe everything they're told by scientists. I mean, look what happened during COVID. Look at all those graphs that, that Chris Whitty produced, and all those models that were produced by Neil Ferguson and Sage, all of which turned out to be garbage and complete rubbish. And if you put in a load of facts into a computer, which you've made up, it will come out with a made-up solution for you. But it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it scientific.
No, and indeed, all science, when you're modelling like that, it works on a certain set of assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that...
Mostly that people are very stupid.
Yeah, and you make the assumptions in the first place, which you then feed in.
Exactly right. What do you make of the announcement from some inside of government? I know we touched on this earlier. Andrew Mitchell has basically said that, the government needs to consider stepping back from these net zero commitments. Is there a chance that they could do that, do you think?
If they actually sense that there was a serious electoral advantage to doing it, then I think they would. And they will have to remember that Reform UK will go into that election demanding proportionality, common sense, and the abandonment of an awful lot of the arbitrary targets which we've got. So they're going to have to say to themselves, well, you know, Labour will double down on green, they'll get the green vote. Reform UK will talk for the people as far as net zero is concerned. What is the Tory position going to be? And they need to start working on that right away. And I rather hope that they wake up, that they just engrave Uxbridge on every single bit of paper that they generate concerning climate change.